All right, in this problem from al-Khwārizmī, I have that I split 10 into two parts. So if I think about that, it's like saying x plus y equals 10. Now, the thing I have to think about, though, is that I can't deal with two variables in this case. So instead, think about if I know that the first value is x, well, what's the second value have to be if they have to add up to 10? I know that the y value would have to equal 10 minus whatever the x value is. So I can really look at this as being x and 10 minus x. And this is helpful because really, when I want to set up my equation here, where it says I've divided the first by the second by the first, and their sum is 2 and a sixth. Well, if I have x over y and y over x, that's not very helpful. But if I have x over 10 minus x, and I have 10 minus x over x equals 2 and 1/6 is the same thing as 13/6. Well, now I have one variable, and I can solve this equation. So that's why I'm rewriting this. Instead of saying y, I'm going to change that and say that, well, it has to be 10 minus x, because that value has to be whatever 10 is, subtracting the first value I have. Now, the fractions, that's a ton of work there. I don't want to deal with that. So I'm going to go and say, let's multiply everything by all the denominators. So if I say instead that this is x over 10 minus x, and I'm going to multiply it by all the denominators. So that's 10 minus x, x, and 6. And I'm going to take the next term, 10 minus x over x, and I'm going to say let's multiply it by the exact same thing. Because if I multiply by equivalent statements, I have not changed the problem. It's still the same line. So as long as what we do to one term, we do to all terms, it's still the same thing. So now look at what happens when I do that. 10 minus x over 10 minus x simplifies to 1. I'm left with a denominator of 1. X over x simplifies my denominator to 1. 6 over 6 simplifies my denominator to 1. So that now, what am I left with? So at this point, what I'll have is x times 6 plus the quantities 10 minus x times 10 minus x times 6. And that'll equal 13 times 10 minus x times x. So this is 6x squared plus, and then this quantity, when I multiply the two binomials, becomes 100 minus 20x plus x squared times 6. And this other quantity will become 130 minus 13x times x. And then this will become 6x squared plus 600 minus 120x plus 6x squared equals 130x minus 13x squared. I'm going to now start combining terms and move everything so that they're positive, because remember that the quadratic formulas that al-Khwārizmī used was always a positive x squared, and everything became positive. So if I think about where's my x squareds positive, they're going to be positive on the left-hand side. So I'm going to add 13x squared to both sides, and I'm going to add 120x to both sides, so that I can then have all positive terms. So now, if I look at this, I've got 6x squared plus 6x squared plus 13x squared. That's 25x squared. And then I have plus 600 equals, well, 130 plus 120 is 250x. And at this point, I now am having my all positive terms. But I think about al-Khwārizmī, he always made the coefficient of x squared be 1. So I'm going to now divide all my terms by 25 so that I can get it into the format that would be necessary. So I've got x squared plus 24 equals 10x. Now I can look and say, okay, I'm going to use that form, x squared plus 24 equals 10x. And look at what were the al-Khwārizmī statements. Well, what al-Khwārizmī said is that in this case, x will equal b over 2 plus or minus the square root of b over 2 squared minus c, which is great because we want two terms. So this gives us the plus or minus, so let's plug in our solutions and make this work. So again, a, b, and c are still our same things that we have, a, b, and c. So it's still, x is still the b value, so make sure you're always paying attention to that. So x will equal 10 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 10 over 2 squared minus 24. Well, let's see. That means that 10 over 2 is 5 plus or minus square root. 5 squared is 25 minus 24. So what I'm looking at is 5 plus or minus 1. So that means that x equals 6 or x equals 4. So there are my two parts. 6 plus 4 is 10. So let's double check that. So if I do 6 over 4 plus 4 over 6, this becomes 36 over 24 plus 16 over 24, and that's 52 over 24. If I simplify that, I end up getting 2 with a remainder of 6 over 24. And what's that simplified to? 2 and 1/6.